Hi there, welcome to Property Space, and this is the podcast and the safe space for everyone. This is where we also bring together all the key industry players who are from overseas property market, all the key specialists, lawyers. So today we have our special guest, also my personal friend Hani from Riseam Sharples, our very long time UK solicitor, and she's also our legal Wikipedia. So whatever legal questions, we will always ring her up and she will always answer a call, irregardless the time zone difference. She's going to share invaluable legal tips. So we're going to get ready for some fun insights, and that would make your property journey a whole lot smoother. So let's dive in. So Hani, you're just as sweet as honey. So Hani, can you give us a very brief introduction of your legal background, your professional background?
Well, thank you so much, Shelvin, for having me here, firstly, and I'm honored to be on your podcast. So I'm a partner and conveyancer within London law firm Riseam Sharples. Mm-hmm. I've been with them for the last 15 years, so it's a very, very long time. I have over a decade experience of UK property, in particular new build properties. So that is where I specialize in, review the contracts and everything for UK property, but in particular, as I said, new build properties.
Yeah, and I think that's also where, when we first crossed paths, back in 2012 or 13, you were just quite new. It's probably like your second and third year in Riseam Sharples.
Yes, I'm very young at that time.
Yes, so. We were both young and still young. Okay, so I think now back in very serious time, back in business, we're going to ask you some legal tips. Number one questions, we get this very often from our clients, and the answer or the advice coming from a lawyer and agent will be very different. So I just want to pick your brains on this. So what are the first or a few key considerations for a foreigner like Malaysian or Singaporean who wants to enter UK property market, and hopefully you can guide us through from a legal perspective?
Okay, so I've met so many buyers and clients within the last decade, and obviously people have different agendas on why they're buying UK property. But namely, I can say that the most aspects for them entering into a UK market is down to possibly timing, family planning, kids going to universities overseas, tax savings, cost savings. Obviously, all these are key considerations what they look into when going into the UK property market. But majority of them is, for instance, as I said, they have kids going to overseas universities in London, and obviously it's costly when you think about having to rent a property out.
Oh yes, so very, very big financial commitment actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in terms of cost savings, family planning, this is a key considerations what they look into. So obviously the UK market is very flexible. It's an open market. There's no restrictions or limitations for any UK foreign investors entering into it. So that's a good thing what they need to consider. So everything is quite
pretty much kind of down to timing. I think it's very aligned to the customers that have recently come to us for very personable, customized advice, especially the parents who are fairly young. When I say fairly young, it's because the kids are still quite young.
Yes.
They are roughly about 9-10 years old only, but the parents are already making plans for them, and they have the foresight that, my daughter is going to do well in the UK because of the UK education system. Let's be honest, UK has the best education system.
And top universities as well, worldwide.
Exactly. So they have already, had that plans in mind, but to get there, it requires a lot of financial commitments and planning.
Yes, planning. 10 years, at least 10-year planning in trying to kind of cost and minimize their outgoings and also to maximize their investments as well.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of consideration coming from currency as well, whether they should buy something near the university or just anywhere in London, anywhere with growth potential. It doesn't have to be near the university. So timing, very much tied down to not because you have money now, that's the best timing, or the market is going through a growth. that's timing. No, timing is more like you know when to do the planning.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's a very valuable sharing and very aligned to what Hani has shared as well. So that leads to the next questions.
But there are a small pool of people
Yep.
who, for instance, have already maximized their investments in KL, Malaysia, or wherever. If they have the capacity and the funds to maybe invest outside, UK is one of the, I mean, for me, I think personally, UK is the best place to invest.
Safe haven. It's also the best spot for you to do your wealth preservation as well. So you can see so many ultra high net worth individuals moving all their wealth into the UK. Of course, there are other countries that have chosen as well, like New York, some maybe putting in Japan. But you could see that they are all sharing a very same features, being the world-class financial hub.
Yes. So there are still a pool of people who still wants to invest outside of wherever they are based.
Exactly. So that leads to the next question, because very much into the legal boundary as well. We know for a fact that UK has the best law. I mean, law started from the UK. Okay, that's why you went there and studied law, right?
Yes.
Okay, is UK housing law giving foreigner like us sufficient protection, legal protection, when it comes to property purchase? And do you think the legal system is friendly to overseas buyers?
So for a start, I have to point out that the conveyancing process is actually the same for the local and foreign buyers.
There's no discrimination.
There's no discrimination, there's no differences. The conveyancing process is equal for both. So whether you are a local buyer or a foreign buyer, the contract, the SMP is the same. There might be one or two clauses that might be slightly different to tailor the overseas buyers, but in actual fact, the conveyancing itself is the same. Obviously, there are key things to review the contract and key clauses to make sure that there are protection for buyers. And when I say protection, this is both for local and foreign buyers. So for instance, the first thing the top of my head, deposit warranty. Of course, you're paying a 10% deposit. You want to make sure that your money is protected.
I want to highlight this, very interesting, because we don't have that in Malaysia.
Okay.
We don't have that. Whatever deposit that we paid down to the developers, it would go straight to the developer's account.
Right.
But I think in the UK, the monies would be all held back in the trust account, is that?
It will be held as stakeholders unless there is a deposit protection warranty. So once that is in place, usually the funds are released to the developer. So the main thing to consider in the contract is to ensure that the deposit is covered by warranty. In the event the developer goes bust or insolvent or bankrupt, which is very unlikely, but there is protection on your money that you paid.
Yep, it's very comforting to know.
The other things that you want to maybe point out is that to make sure there is construction warranty. You know?
Okay.
So for instance, in the UK, they provide NHBC.
Yes.
And that is 10 years for...
So NHBC stands for National Housing Warranty...
building control.
Building control, yes, sorry. Building control.
Yes.
Sorry, I forgot the full name of it.
So basically, they give 10 years warranty from the date when the apartment's completed. So it's not the date when you exchange, but the date when you get the keys. So you have 10 years warranty.
10 years.
And this is for major structural defects. So I'm not sure whether you have that in Malaysia or possibly you do, but it's not as long as 10 years.
They do have the liability period, but I think the process or the mechanism to get to it, to get it sorted and rectified is a bit different from the UK and can be quite a lengthy process. But from my experience dealing with reputable developers, whom we usually carry the products from, they are very, very attentive to all of that, defects, or if there is any warranty that need to be provided, or to clarify, and all, everything will be done in a very timely manner. They have proper paperwork in place, so there won't be any issues with transparency. So, so far our customers are quite happy with how they handle the holding. Again, it's a very hand-holding journey from us, not just from the developer, not just from the government, from the insurance provider, but because it's a very transparent system. The transparency is something that we have been always telling our clients. In the UK, whatever you're buying is all will be stipulated in the contract, in the clauses, in the terms. And also you will have the handbook after the completion. So all of that warranty will be attached together in the booklet.
Yeah, correct.
Okay? So now the legal clauses that you mentioned just now will be quite general, but how about the off-plan developments, because we do so many off-plan, we promote predominantly off-plan developments to Malaysian because that sits well with us, with Malaysian investing public, for the benefit of making capital gains throughout during the construction period, and also it gives really good flexibility towards your cash flow.
Yeah.
So, is there any difference or any key consideration that the buyer should be aware of when it comes to off-plan development?
Okay, so one of the things that's just to name a few, there are a few clauses that is relevant in a new built contract. For instance, usually there will be a long stop date. So what that means is if your apartment is not ready or completed by that specific date in that contract, then the buyers have the right to cancel the contract and have their money deposits returned back to them.
Okay.
So this serves as a protection for buyers.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
That might be another exit strategy for buyers in terms of an assignment clause. So usually for local buyers, developers will not offer this. Usually this is only available for foreign buyers.
Okay.
An assignment clause.
Oh, is that so?
Yes. Oh. So usually like for assignment clause is to be used if you decide to change the name, for instance,
yes.
or
assign to a family member.
Assign to a family member. For instance, you put the contract in the mom and dad's name, and when the son or daughter turns 18, prior to completion, they want to put it in their son's and daughter's name just to minimize their tax, for instance. Or if they've managed to sell the contract to a third party for a higher price, this is something that they are available to do. But this is not in all contracts. It's something that is possibly being provided to developers, but it's something to consider.
And would you need a consent from the developers?
Yes. So for reassignment, it's always the developer's consent is usually required. So this is just to tie in with the money laundering side, money laundering requirements of the buyer, the assignee, second buyer, so that to ensure that they are able to complete.
And the reassignment is they're only allowing one time, or
no? It's only usually one time. Previously, they were allowing so many reassignments, but these days it's just the one.
Just one time.
Just the one time, just to ensure that the sub buyer is able to complete, so there isn't any like pyramid effect. If the third, fourth, fifth buyer, so if that end buyer is unable to complete, then it falls back to
the first one.
Exactly. So to make it simpler, they'll just have one reassignment.
Understood. And any cutoff period for the reassignment clause?
Okay, so it has to be done prior to the completion notice being served, prior to the apartment being completed, being built. But in certain contracts, there might be a cutoff point. So it just depends on the developer, depends on the scheme and development. But this is something key that your lawyer needs to review.
Yes.
And then advise you on.
Not just like, giving you a set of contract and then just point out the page that requires a signature. But usually Hani will be very detailed. She will go through all the key clauses that will concern overseas buyers, and also if you're buying an off-plan property, then definitely there will be some special clauses that you need to be aware of. So that's why that's how you make an informed decision from there.
Correct.
So next question, because since that you have gone through a bit more insights on the clauses, what is more important is the process. Okay. So you can process means after agent helping, agent like us, helping you to submit an offer. Okay, we put forward an offer for you to the developer. So from the offer acceptance onwards, all the way through to legal handover, if you can help us to walk us through the process, step 1, step 2, in a very layman term.
Sure, I mean, there are stages. I would call it stages in the conveyancing process. So as you mentioned, the first stage is, picking the right unit for you. And then at that point, you have to maybe negotiate certain terms or the price. And then once that's been agreed, you pay a reservation fee to take the unit off the market. So that's the first stage. You pay a reservation fee just to kind of say that that's the unit I want to go ahead with.
That's a booking, yes.
Yeah. So the second stage would be the exchange part. So usually this is where you pay the 10% deposit.
Okay, exchange is a very foreign name for Malaysian buyers.
Okay.
Because we don't do exchange. We actually basically call that stamping.
Okay.
Stamping. So
interesting.
So exchange in the UK term, and also quite relevant to Australian is when they exchange the contract.
Correct. So when we physically exchange the contract, you pay the 10%, the buyer's lawyer and the seller's lawyer do the exchange part.
That's
basically.
right.
Yeah.
So basically, there are two copies. There will be a copies that bear the buyer's signature.
Yep.
And then another copy will be bearing the developer's signature,
Correct.
the vendor, so to speak. So then they exchange.
Correct.
So eventually, the exchange copy the buyer will be holding will be the signature from the developer.
Correct.
And then the same goes for vice versa for the developers holding your copy.
Correct.
But in terms of getting a financing, say for example, you want to go through Maybank or CIMB Bank for mortgage, then we will advise you to have both copies, both sets, to be submitted to the bank.
Correct.
As part of the documentation as well. So just to avoid confusion, exchange doesn't mean that exchange whatever money and paperwork. It's the exchange of contract, and that is equivalent.
And just to highlight, once contracts are exchanged, you're entering into a legally binding agreement.
Exactly.
So
that
this
marks
is
the binding part.
Correct. You're obligated to complete the transaction.
Yes.
That is your obligation.
Yes.
So it's a legally binding document. So obviously once contracts are exchanged, you can't change your mind.
Yes. You can change your mind later by reassignment, but only one time.
Yes. But
Only
your
one time.
commitment is there. You have
Correct.
to commit in completing the transaction.
Exactly.
That is your commitment there.
Exactly. And the exchange would also means that there is not only the exchange of paperwork, but also the exchange deposit.
That usually is a 10% deposit.
Exactly.
That is required to pay at the point of exchange.
And how long usually from the booking day? When the exchange should be
So
expected
it's
to take
usually
place?
21 days to 28 days. It depends on the developer, depends on the development, and depends on the contract itself. So when I pointed out, I mentioned earlier, negotiate special terms. If you need maybe a few more days in extension,
Which is a reasonable
you're going
request.
overseas or you're going holiday, I'm not going to be back in time. So this is the part where you need to ensure to say, I need a little bit more time. I need maybe 30 days. I need a little bit. So this needs to be all considered at the point of prior to exchange, so we know that before we exchange, we know that all these terms have been agreed and inputted in the contract papers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Then after exchange, what comes next?
So if you're buying an off-plan property, usually it's 1 or 2 years off from completion. So there might be some stage payments, a further 5% as the further 10%. So these are usually the third stage where you pay stage payments.
And your firm and even like yourself or your legal assistant would also send a payment reminder.
Correct. So we usually write to our clients a few weeks before, usually be 2 to 4 weeks prior to the payment deadline, just to remind them that
It's time to pay.
there's a payment coming up. So yes, we will write and notify all buyers prior to that.
Okay, so now once all the stage deposits have been fulfilled,
Yep.
and then say for example we are roughly about 3 months away from legal completion, what would you do?
Okay, so we as a firm, we write to our clients at least 6 months prior to completion.
6 months.
So the next stage is financing. So if you have cash to complete, that's great. But if you need loan to secure a loan, then that's where you need to consider the right time to speak to a broker, speak to banks, approach the lenders in trying to secure a mortgage in good time of completion. So that's why we write to our clients 6 months prior, just to give them a little bit more time to try to secure the loan, speak to the brokers and lenders, see what rates are out there for them to shop around a bit. So this is for them to kind of start looking into financing in completion time.
And this is also when RBC will step in. Hey, do you want some help? We're going to refer you to the best brokers and the bankers. And I think because we know each other for so many years and we have done so many transactions together, you will see that we actually work hand in hand. in a way that we help clients to navigate through the whole process. So when they start writing to customer for payments, for reminders on getting a loan, RBC is usually being copied in the email as well.
Yes.
So that we would just do the follow-up for them, and then we make sure everyone is on the same page.
Correct. Yeah.
And then we don't want any any last-minute drama. And when customer being caught up in a very short notice, that, oh, I only have like 1 month to complete, then usually it will be a very disastrous process afterward.
Yeah.
So we just want to be as advanced as possible.
Yeah.
And we are very glad that they have the system in place where the reminder is being set 6 months before. And 6 months is also relevant to some UK buyers, most of UK buyers, because this is also when they can start applying mortgage from the UK lenders.
Yeah.
Because their mortgage offer is being valid for 6 months.
Correct. Yeah. So once the mortgage is issued, it's usually lasts for 6 months. So you need to draw down from the mortgage within the 6 months period. But I think the key is communication.
Exactly.
So if there's any hiccups in your loan application, or there's certain things, then it's imperative that you communicate with your lawyers so that they can just give the developer a bit of a heads up.
Yep.
Say, look, this particular buyer is having difficulties in securing a loan. They might need a little bit more time than the other buyers. So could you maybe serve the completion notice and the last batch, just to kind of like give them a little bit more time?
That's right.
So the key point is communication. So if there's anything that you need to highlight to your lawyers, this is the right time to do it.
Yeah, and also bear in mind that your solicitor, like Hani herself, is looking after the customer best interest, not just someone who is knocking on your door and say, hey, it's time to pay. It's more like looking after the best interest, and also to look after your time management as well. So after the 6 months reminder is done, then what's come next? That would be like pre-completion surveys and...
Yes, so within that 6 months, we talk about financing. We also remind them about furnishing.
Oh,
so
yes.
Furnishing is quite a good point as well. So, if you are planning on renting out the apartment, then maybe you might want to buy some basic furniture. Then this is something that you can assist
provide, yes.
with providing furniture companies. We also talk a little bit about lettings as well. So this is where you can recommend any letting agencies. And yeah, so this is the bits where, it's a little bit nitty-gritty, but it's quite... it's a fun process.
It's actually a fun process.
Picking out your furniture, making sure that you got your letting set, your financing set. So it's just not like a mundane thing to do, but it's just making it into a process.
Yeah, and it's a baby step thing, but I think it will only become very nerve-wracking if you don't have the right support. Yeah. So we are very glad that we actually form a very strong circle of support, not just with the letting partners or furniture companies, but also most importantly is the solicitor, because they look after all the legal aspects of your purchase. Make sure that you're fulfilling all kinds of compliance tests as well. So after the pre-completion survey and prep work is done, then it will be the time that you pay off the
completion.
final.
So the second to last stage is the completion stage. So this is where, once the apartment is built, the vendor provides you notice, giving you the final completion date that you need to complete. Obviously, you don't want to fail in completion. So this is the time where you need to pay the balance. Okay. And then for us on the legal side, if you have secured a mortgage, this is where we draw down the loan.
How long is the notice period?
So the notice period is 2 weeks. It could be 3 weeks. I've seen some developments providing 3 weeks, but the usual is 10 working days. So that's 14 days.
14 days. Yeah.
So within that 14 days, that 2 weeks, you will have to sign all the completion documents, sign any mortgage documents if you arrange a financing, and then basically send us the final payment. The final payment. Yeah. So, and this will include the balance purchase price, land registry fees, stamp duties, legal fees. So this is where we collect all the funds in order to complete on time.
Okay.
Now, once completion has taken place, the keys will be released.
almost instantly, actually. I've been experiencing a very swift process. As soon as the payment is done, it hits the developer's account, and then they were like, oh, the key is released. You can pick it up now. Oh, okay.
So obviously, if you aren't able to be there in hand to collect the keys, you can appoint an agent, or RBC can arrange
help with
the
all
key
the key
collection.
collection.
Or if you have your kids there studying, they can come and look at the property themselves and collect the keys and do a tour.
Oh, excellent. So that pretty much sums up our chapter today, our episode today. Very layman term legal discussion. I hope that I can do more with you. There will probably like a few more interesting questions later on. I'm burning.
But be nice.
I'm always nice with you.
You are nice.
So we're gonna do the next episode maybe later. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I hope you find our sharing helpful today, and that helps you to have a lot more clarity when it comes to buying a property in the UK. It's not hard, although the country is about 13-14 hours away, but the buying process is actually very straightforward. So we will see you in the next episode. Thanks, Hani.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.